Very important that you understand what leads to poverty. Mere talks. A nation will be poor when its leaders talk more than they work. Now, I've heard that we want to make Kenya like Singapore. I would like to give you a case report of how Singapore became Singapore. In 1963, I think September, I studied a lot about the nation. So when I speak, I don't just speak about Kenya. In 1963, Singapore, with the same time with Kenya, became independent. And in case you're not aware, unlike Kenya, Singapore has no meaningful minerals, at least as per today. Researchers have tried researching the land. There is nothing much. So Singapore got its independence at the same moment with Kenya, 1963, assuming that those that says we got it earlier, it's fine. Let's just use the documented time frame. Now at 1963, I will need to give you the structure of Singapore. They did not have a military. They have no meaningful minerals. Education was at its lowest. I'm talking about the Singapore you want it to become, because you can't say you want to become like someone without studying how that person became themselves. If you're going to become like a person, you must study what that person did to become like that person. Singapore was destined to poverty just by the fact of looking at a particular nation. They did not have a military. So a president then by the name Lee Kuan Yew, something like that, he came up and he started to strategize Singapore. He wanted to make Singapore a first world nation. Now remember, it is a third world nation. Same time Kenya has been independent. And I've seen a lot of people say, we are going to make Kenya like what? We are going to make... Don't worry. Have you studied how that nation became it? And before you run to say housing, just hold on. So Singapore knew that it did not have the ability to compete. I will need to even explain to you the number. It is less 7 million people. In other words, they have not even reached 7 million Singaporeans. And the land is so small that it's just on an island. A very little land. So the owner now realizes that he wants to make Singapore what it is. And so all the people approximately 16 and above, they are told to join the military. They start making their military. Then they come and realize that Singapore needs to speak English. So they make 4 major languages among the Singaporeans that will be able to speak. Among them is English, Chinese, and 2 other languages. So they begin to push English into schools. And I'm not claiming that you have to do English. I'm just showing you the strategy of what made Singapore, Singapore. And I beg you to listen. So they began to build those particular things. And then they finally now got to a point and realized we would want Singaporeans to own. And this is where you see, especially the Kenyan people that are going to benchmark, they now start talking about the housing project. Before you go there, let me explain it. So the government created a fund where people would give towards that fund, and then they would sell those houses to the people for very cheap, which is, you might say, more or less like what is happening in Kenya. But before you go there, Singapore had 4 major positions to play in order to deal. Number 1, it was the education system of Singapore. And in case you're not aware, Singapore's system of education has been ranked the best or among the best. They decided they are going to teach English and they are going to invest in education. Number 1. Number 2, they are going to invest in housing. Their whole idea of removing the ghettos. Number 3, which was actually the first thing, was to fight corruption. And guess what he did? At some point, a Singaporean minister went and gave a tender for the road. And they decided to give him a kickback. Not much money. The matter was followed through and they found out. And so the president was on his way. And I want you to listen. So now when the minister took the money and ate, the president heard about it and he was on his way. And you need to go and do the fact checking. By the time he's getting, when this person, the minister, is seeing him coming on the window, he took a drug and decided to kill himself. Reason was because corruption was going to be dealt with head on. And it was the first thing the Singaporean president decided to fight. It was not housing project. So if you do housing project, if you do real estate, if you do industries, if you do education, and then you fight corruption, the last thing, it means you can't fight corruption because you are giving corruption wings. Corruption is in housing project, corruption is in healthcare, corruption is in education, corruption is in industries. So what the president set out to do, his first agenda was to fight corruption. He created laws that were going to be very difficult, and I would like you to go and study the Constitution of Singapore. Very difficult. One of the things with the laws that were set out in Singapore is that you cannot borrow to pay. You can only borrow to invest. What do I mean? Look at Kenya, for example. Maybe, for example, the teachers have no money. You go and borrow to pay teachers. How do you expect to get the money back? There is a law in Singapore where you cannot borrow to pay off. You can only borrow to invest, and they have a cap. You cannot borrow beyond this, else the nation will become indebted to others. So I'm showing you the strategy that many people do not understand. So when you're busy saying Singapore, they fought corruption as their first agenda, they put resources in education, they did a well-trained military. Do you understand that? And then they went for the housing project. They created a fund whereby everyone, I think it was approximately 20%, where everyone was mandated to put resources, but equally speaking, any Singaporean dollar that they use, the president came out and showed the people transparency. So let me show you a fast forward, because unlike Kenya and Africa, Botswana has diamond reserves. Kenya has different reserves. Congo has cobalt reserves. South Africa has iridium reserves. So there are so many different reserves. Singapore does not have any meaningful. So they will need to do something else in order to make Singapore, Singapore. So the man knew that looking at the geographical location of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, that it was going to act as a catalyst between cross-border. So he went and started looking at the airport structure, he went and started looking at the road structure, and he went and started looking at the sea structure. 3 points of entry. So what did he do? They had raised approximately 800 million Singaporean dollars to build the airport in the main location. When the president came, he thought quickly, and he decided to ignore those resources and raise approximately another over 1.5 billion, and to go to the coast, like here we would call it Mombasa, to the coastal line, and re-establish an airport. And I would like you to listen very well, because today I'm going to give you the easiest way to build an airport. I've seen so many people given an opportunity to raise this Kenyan airport. Sometimes I wonder, oh my God, may the Lord help us. So he leaves that airport in the capital, and he goes to the coastal region and establishes an airport with that particular money. What was his thought? He knew that he did not have an opportunity to mine any meaningful resource. So he would need to make the resource. Guess what the resource was? Human beings. And approximately less than 7 million Singaporeans. I want you to imagine the number. I don't even want to go to Qatar and show you how many Qatarians. Original Qatarians, how many are they? Kenya has over 50 million people. Tanzania has 60 plus, I think. Nigeria, you cannot even imagine, over 200 million people. And we are still not looking at the most powerful resource. It's called human resource. When you have humans. So Singaporeans now go ahead and they build that airport. And what he begins to do, he begins to establish a network. So what does he do? He comes and he negotiates for this airport. Builds an airport, and in case many of you are not aware, I want to show you how to raise an airport. Our leaders, please listen. We know we are little people. Yeah, you don't need to tell us. We are pastors, we know. Our work should just be on the pulpit, according to you. Our work should just be to beg you money and to tell you Jesus is coming. We don't have brains beyond to think about a nation, we know. But some of us have gone ahead to think and to study to show themselves approved. So what he did, he started desiring to raise an airport. So how do you raise an airport? This is what they did. And in case you're not aware, the Singaporean airport was voted the best airport in the world. So then the question should be, how did they build the greatest airport in the world? So this is what the person did. He knew he did not have resources. He knew he did not have much. So there are two things that he did to establish that nation. Number one, he built what you call special economic zones, where the tax was going to be little or nothing. What would that mean? It encourages foreign companies to establish locations to continue building. Special economic zone. Listen to how Singapore became Singapore. So he established those special economic zone. He set out the map of the nation and he realized, if we do this here, if we do this here, if we do this here, all the parts of the nations are going to expand. Not just investing in the mountain, not just investing in Rift Valley, not just investing in Western. No, special economic zones that are going to touch over through the whole land and raise the whole culture of the land. So what did he do? He put the tax so favorable that companies like, I'm giving an example, not it. Let's take an example of Tesla. Tesla is an American company, for example. This is what it takes to produce produce the tax of that company in America. So what he did, he made sure that to produce the same product in their country, he made it so cheap that when the owners of this manufacturing plant compared, they preferred to go to the foreign land and set up base. Please listen. So he created special economic zones. So companies became interested because of those economic zones. Companies saw that it was cheaper to produce from Singapore rather than to produce from their own nation. I've explained the whole concept of special economic zone. Number two, he now went to the airport. And what he did is that he established a culture of what you call duty free. Many of you, if I ask you how does an airport make money, you know the answer you'll give me? You'll tell me tickets. Believe me, that is not it is not even close to how airports make money. So I went and I studied the economics of how that man, the president, built an airport. Today here, we are looking for Adani to build an airport for us. So what the man did, he built an airport and made sure there are as many shops as possible. And he made it so favorable for people to do business in the airport. You're going to understand it. So he positioned many duty-free shops, went and liaised with foreign companies so that any product that is bought from a duty-free shop in Singapore, if you enter with that product, maybe you buy a radio in Singapore duty-free, you enter in Kenya with that particular radio, Kenyan government cannot tax you because they already have an alliance with that government. Have you understood that? So people saw it as a point of acquiring things cheaper. So people would fly into Singapore just for the duty-free products. And I want you to listen. So you're going to ask, so how do they make money? So many people now saw that and they wanted to put shops in Singapore. So they started coming in to rent shops. And when you talk about renting of shops, it is one of the best ways for an airport to make money. So those of you that your airports are broken down, there is a very easy way. Make it cheap for any product that is sold. But today I've traveled on different airports in the world. One of the most expensive places to buy things is airports. Singapore managed it. So what does that mean? It means more people would want to go to that place to buy specific things. Now, in case, because you have a lot of money, the government is making money from those shops at the airport, what does the government do? It reduces what you call flight fee, landing fee. I hope you're listening to what is happening. Because the government is making money, it reduces the landing fee. When I say flight fee, I'm not talking about tickets. I'm talking about runway fee. There is a fee that any aeroplane that uses your runway, there is a fee it pays. Because the government is already making money, the fees goes down. Now, what does it mean for the fees to go down? If the fee goes down, guess what happens? Many more aeroplanes prefer to land there, refuel, recheck their engines. Why? Because it's cheaper for the landing fees. Now, do you understand that? After the landing fees was dealt with, they went now to what you call private parking. They made it so competitive that it was cheaper for you to leave an aeroplane in Singapore for 1 year than to leave an aeroplane in London. Why? Because they are already making money from the shops inside, so many people would want to come in. So it started creating what you call transit. So Singapore, that did not have minerals, became a transit place. So planes are coming in to refuel, they prefer there, and many people are buying things from those shops. The shops are making money, the shops are paying the government. Are you understanding that? Now, many more aeroplanes are coming in because of the landing fees. They are coming in because of the fueling cost. Now, tickets became more cheaper. Have you understood how that structure works? So he went ahead and he built an airport, not by raising taxes, but by simply making sure that it's affordable. So now, what did Singapore become? Singapore became a transit zone. So now more planes were landing there because it was cheaper to land in Singapore. You go do an analysis of what it takes to land in Kenya, what it takes to land in Rwanda, what it takes, and then you will wonder why Ethiopia is the biggest African institution where many planes land. It's not a gimmick, and it's not mere words. It's not ni noma si noma, ni fire si fire, I'm gonna build roads. No, this is not how it works. It takes intelligence for you to build. But unfortunately, because the African system of building is talking and not doing, so they went and built. The airport today is rated the best, or if not the second best globally. So what did they go and do? They added another wing. They kept adding wings to a point whereby they made it so attractive. Hotels are inside there. They have actually waiting areas where there are theater rooms. They are waiting area. So someone prefers, I would rather wait for, and I've waited for a plane for approximately 4 or 5 hours. It's not a good thing to wait in the airport. Have you seen people in the Kenyan airport sleeping on the... You can't see that in Singapore because they have these waiting areas that are so attractive that someone prefers to go and wait 5 hours because it's as equal as you sleeping at home. So they made it so cheap. The foods that are bought in Singapore are cheap in the airport. They have hotels in the airport, so it means people can go and relax. They have theaters in the airport. It became a tourist attraction. They actually created this waterfall in the airport. I think it's about 35 meters, if I'm not wrong. That people just go there to look at that waterfall. Little things. So they finished that. So Singapore now started becoming. Let me not even go to the water and what they did with their coastal lines. While here there is a lot of corruption. What did they do with their coastal lines? So this is what they did. And in case you're not aware, the shipping industry, its shipping industry is the world's second largest by volume. The volumes of the shipping industry are the only one that beats it in terms of volumes on their coastal shipping industry is Shanghai. It's the second. Now, number two, you need to understand something about it. And first world for transship, meaning where many ships come and exchange goods. It is the leading. Do you remember what I told you? It is cheaper for you to use the Singaporean depot to do a transship. So ships come here from here, ships come from here, and then they exchange. They prefer to use Singapore. Have you understood what they did with the port? Have you seen it? Now they went to the third one. And they made sure that they are so favorable for their neighbors. It became so cheap for their neighbors to use the Singaporean airspace, the Singaporean road network, and the Singaporean water network to take things to their own nations. Now, take like the case of Kenya. Uganda is landlocked. So, in case you see any nation, you make it so cheap, or rather, you make it so cost effective for people to use your coastal lines, nations that are landlocked, to take goods to their nations. That's what Singapore did to become Singapore. They opened special economic zones. They built road networks. They knew that they did not have any reserves in terms of any meaningful minerals. And they knew that their only way was to use the human resource. Now, it will interest you right now, the cost per capita is 65,000. And it will interest you how long it took for Singapore to be Singapore. I've just given you an overview of Singapore. Meanwhile, I have a lot of things to tell you about Singapore. But guess the bedrock of Singapore? Corruption-free zone. Of course, I'm not saying you have to deal with corruption zero. But you cannot make corruption so normal. And yet you say you want to be like Singapore. So the next time your president or your governor or your who tells you we want to make Kenya like Singapore, can you compare what I've said with what he said? Are they willing to deal with the infrastructure? Are they willing to deal with education? Are they willing to deal with corruption, which is the first thing that the Singaporean president dealt with?